A wedding without love. The cathedral bells of St. Augustine's rang across Boston's historic district, their joyful peals echoing off brownstone buildings and cobblestone streets. Inside the Gothic church, sunlight streamed through centuries-old stained glass, painting rainbow patterns across the marble floor where white rose petals formed a path to the altar. Cecilia Winters stood in the bride's chamber, her reflection staring back from an antique mirror that had witnessed countless brides before her. The ivory gown she wore was a masterpiece of French lace and silk, custom designed to hug her slender frame before cascading into a cathedral train that seemed to flow like water. Her dark auburn hair was styled in soft waves, held back by a diamond tiara that had belonged to her grandmother. She looked like a princess from a fairy tale. She felt like a sacrifice being prepared for slaughter. "You look absolutely radiant, darling," her mother, Patricia Winters, said as she adjusted Cecilia's veil with meticulous care. "The Winters and Cross families together at last. Your father is so proud. This merger will secure both our futures." Cecilia forced a smile, though her stomach churned with anxiety. At 23, she was marrying Damien Cross, heir to Cross Technologies, one of the largest tech conglomerates in North America. Their families had been friends for decades, their fathers having built their respective empires side by side. This marriage had been discussed since Cecilia was a teenager, always presented as inevitable, a joining of two dynasties that made perfect business sense. What made it bearable, what had made Cecilia agree without more protest, was that she genuinely liked Damien during their carefully chaperoned encounters over the past year. He was handsome, certainly, with dark hair, sharp features, and intense blue eyes that seemed to see everything. But more than that, he'd been kind during their meetings. He'd asked about her interests, her degree in art history, her volunteer work at the Children's Museum. He'd made her laugh with dry observations about their family's social circles. He'd sent thoughtful gifts, first editions of books she'd mentioned loving, tickets to gallery exhibitions he'd remembered her wanting to see. Cecilia had allowed herself to hope, to believe that maybe, just maybe, this arranged marriage could become something real. That Damien's kindness meant he felt the same tentative affection she'd developed for him. That they could build love from the foundation of respect and shared history. "5 minutes, Miss Winters," the wedding coordinator announced, peeking through the door. Cecilia's heart hammered against her ribs. Her best friend and maid of honor, Sophie Martinez, squeezed her hand. "You okay? You look pale." "Just nervous," Cecilia managed, though it was more than nerves. It was the terrifying leap into an unknown future, the surrender of choice in the name of family duty. The ceremony began. Cecilia walked down the aisle on her father's arm, past 500 guests representing the cream of Boston's business and social elite. Cameras flashed, despite the no photography rule. This wedding would be on the cover of every society magazine by week's end. At the altar, Damien stood perfectly still in his custom Tom Ford tuxedo. He looked devastatingly handsome, his dark hair styled with casual perfection, his tall frame radiating the confidence that came from a lifetime of wealth and power. When their eyes met, Cecilia searched his face for some sign of the warmth she'd seen during their courtship. She found none. His blue eyes were cool, assessing, his expression as neutral as if he were attending a board meeting rather than his own wedding. When he took her hand for the vows, his grip was firm but impersonal. No squeeze of reassurance, no small smile of encouragement, just mechanical courtesy. Cecilia's hope began to wither. She spoke her vows in a clear voice, meaning every word about love and devotion and partnership. Damien recited his with perfect diction and zero emotion, as though reading from a script he'd memorized but didn't believe. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Damien's kiss was so brief and perfunctory that several guests murmured in confusion. The reception at the Four Seasons was a lavish affair that had taken 6 months to plan. Cecilia smiled through the toasts, the first dance, the cake-cutting, playing her role as the blushing bride, while Damien played the attentive groom for the cameras. But she noticed things. The way his jaw was tight with tension, how his smiles never reached his eyes, the fact that he drank more champagne than she'd ever seen him consume during their courtship. Finally, mercifully, they were able to leave. Damien's driver took them to the penthouse apartment in the newly constructed cross tower, 60 floors of luxury overlooking Boston Harbor. Cecilia had seen photos during the planning stages, but never the finished space. It took her breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around the entire apartment, offering panoramic views of the city and harbor. The interior was all clean lines and expensive materials: marble, steel, leather, glass. Modern art that probably cost millions hung on the walls. It was stunning and sophisticated and utterly without warmth. "The master suite is through there," Damien said, pointing to double doors on the right side of the open-plan living space. "Your room is on the left wing. Patricia had your things moved in yesterday." Cecilia turned slowly to face him. "My room?" "Yes, you'll have your own space. Ensuite bathroom, walk-in closet, sitting area. Everything you need." "But we're married." The words came out smaller than she intended. Damien loosened his tie and walked to the bar, pouring himself a generous measure of scotch. He took a long drink before facing her fully, his expression as hard as granite. "Cecilia, I want to be very clear about what this marriage is and isn't. Our families needed this alliance. Cross Technologies needs the biotech patents your family's pharmaceutical division controls. Winters Pharmaceuticals needs our AI and data processing capabilities. This merger makes both companies stronger, more competitive. That's why we're here. I know the business reasons, but..." "There is no but. That's the entirety of it." Damien's voice was flat, final. "I'll fulfill my obligations as your husband in public. We'll attend events together, present a united front to the business world, maintain appearances for our families. But in private, I have no interest in pretending this is anything other than what it is, a strategic arrangement." Cecilia felt like she'd been slapped. "During our courtship, you were kind. You seemed interested in getting to know me. Was all that pretense?" "It was courtesy. I'm not a monster, Cecilia. I can be pleasant to someone I have to spend time with, but don't mistake politeness for affection." He poured another drink. "I'm being honest with you now because I think you deserve that much. Better to establish expectations clearly than let you develop hopes that will never be fulfilled." "So what? We just live as roommates? Strangers sharing an address?" "Essentially, yes. You'll have everything you need. Unlimited budget, full access to all household staff, use of the cars and driver. I won't monitor your activities or restrict your freedom in any way. In return, I expect you to maintain the public appearance of a happily married couple and not cause any scandals that would embarrass either family." Cecilia's hands trembled as she removed her grandmother's tiara, setting it carefully on the entry table. "Why did you agree to this marriage if you hate me so much?" "I don't hate you." Damien's tone suggested he found the question tedious. "Hate requires emotional investment. I'm indifferent to you, which is different. I agreed because it made business sense, and because refusing would have caused problems with my father and the board. Sometimes we do things we don't want to do because they're necessary." The cordial cruelty of his words ignited something in Cecilia, not tears but anger. "So you're just another acquisition for your portfolio, another asset to be managed." "If you want to think of it that way," he shrugged, "though I'd say you're getting an excellent deal out of this arrangement. You'll live in luxury, have access to society's highest circles, never want for anything material. Many women would consider that a fair trade. Many women aren't being told on their wedding night that their husband finds them so repellent he can't even pretend to care about them." Something flickered across Damien's face, surprise maybe at her sharp tone, but it vanished quickly behind.
The next weeks were a careful dance of secrecy and stolen moments. They kept their relationship private at the hospital, but outside work, Gabriel integrated himself into Sophie's life with surprising ease. He showed up at Brandon's basketball games and cheered louder than anyone. He helped Riley with her college application essays, offering advice without being overbearing. He cooked dinner in Sophie's small kitchen, looking completely at home despite his wealth and status. "He's good for you," Riley observed one evening after Gabriel had left. "You smile more. You seem less tired." "He makes me happy," Sophie admitted. "Then why do you look worried?" Because Sophie was worried about the secret they were keeping, about hospital politics, about Vanessa's increasingly hostile behavior. The surgeon had noticed something was different, and her attempts to undermine Sophie had escalated. The situation came to a head when Sophie discovered Vanessa reviewing her employee file without authorization. "What are you doing?" Sophie demanded. Vanessa didn't look guilty. "Researching, making sure everything about your hiring was above board. It would be terrible if there were irregularities, wouldn't it? If it appeared you'd received preferential treatment for inappropriate reasons." "I earned my position." "Did you? Or did you cry in front of the right man at the right time?" Vanessa's smile was poison. "I'm going to the board, Sophie. I'm going to make sure they investigate exactly how Gabriel's personal feelings influenced his professional decisions. And when they do, your employment here will end." Sophie felt sick. "Why are you doing this?" "Because Gabriel is mine. He was always meant to be mine. And I won't let some desperate little paramedic take what I spent years building." That evening, Sophie told Gabriel about Vanessa's threat. They were in his apartment, a penthouse she'd started spending nights at, leaving the twins with Gabriel's housekeeper, Maria, who treated them like their own grandchildren. "She's bluffing," Gabriel said, pulling Sophie into his arms. "She has no grounds for an investigation." "But Gabriel, what if she's right? What if the board decides I did receive preferential treatment? They could fire me, and worse, they could damage your reputation." "I don't care about my reputation." "Well, I do. You built this hospital as a legacy. I won't be the reason it's tarnished." Sophie pulled away. "Maybe we should cool things off, just until—" "No," Gabriel's voice was firm. "I've spent 5 years being cautious, being careful, not letting anyone get close because I was afraid of losing someone again. I'm not doing that anymore. Not with you." "What do you mean, losing someone again?" Gabriel was silent for a long moment. Then he led Sophie to a photo on his mantel, a beautiful woman with dark hair and a gentle smile, holding a newborn baby. "Her name was Rebecca," Gabriel said quietly. "My wife. She died 5 years ago, giving birth to our daughter, Lily." Sophie's breath caught. "Gabriel, I didn't know you had a daughter." "She lives with my parents in Portland. They take excellent care of her, and I visit every weekend." Pain flickered across his face. "After Rebecca died, I threw myself into work, built this hospital as a memorial to her, as a penance for not being able to save her. I told myself I'd never risk loving someone again, never risk that kind of loss." "So what changed?" You did. Gabriel turned to face her. You walked into my life broken and exhausted, and instead of just accepting help, you fought for your independence. You challenged me. You made me remember that being alive means risking pain. And Sophie, I'd rather risk everything with you than play it safe for the rest of my life. Sophie felt tears streaming down her face. I'm scared of failing you, of losing this life we're building, of not being enough. You're more than enough. You're everything. Gabriel kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. But you need to decide, Sophie. Are you brave enough to fight for this? Because if Vanessa goes to the board, it's going to get ugly. People will judge us. They'll say terrible things. Can you handle that? Sophie thought about everything Gabriel had given her, not just the job and the apartment, but the safety to hope, the freedom to dream, the courage to love. She thought about Riley and Brandon, about the life they were building together, about the man who'd caught her when she fell and never let go. Yes, she said, I can handle it, because you're worth fighting for. Gabriel smiled and pulled her close. Then let her try. We'll face it together. But neither of them knew just how vicious the fight would become when everything falls apart. Vanessa Hart moved with surgical precision, and her attack was calculated to cause maximum damage. She didn't go to the board directly. Instead, she planted seeds of doubt, whispered to the right people, compiled evidence that painted Sophie as an opportunist and Gabriel compromised by personal feelings. The first sign of trouble came when Sophie was called to HR. The meeting was brief and humiliating. Questions about her relationship with Dr. Stone, implications that her employment had been inappropriate from the start, suggestions that she'd manipulated a vulnerable man for personal gain. We're not saying anything has been proven, the HR director said carefully, but given the allegations, we need to place you on administrative leave pending investigation. Allegations? Sophie felt the world tilting. What allegations? That Dr. Stone hired you based on personal attraction rather than professional qualifications, that you've been receiving preferential treatment, that hospital resources have been improperly used for your benefit. None of that is true. Then the investigation will clear you. Until then, please leave your badge and access card. Sophie called Gabriel immediately, but he was in surgery. She left the hospital in a daze, driving home on autopilot. When she arrived, she found Riley and Brandon watching TV, their faces lighting up when they saw her. "You're home early," Brandon said. "Want to help me with my physics homework? That stuff makes no sense." Sophie couldn't do it. Couldn't pretend everything was fine when their entire lives were about to implode again. "I was suspended from work. They're investigating my relationship with Gabriel." The twins stared at her in shock. "What does that mean?" Riley asked quietly. "It means I might lose my job, which means we might lose this apartment, the good schools, everything we've built." "Because you're dating Dr. Stone?" Brandon's voice rose with adolescent fury. "That's not fair. He makes you happy. Why does anyone care?" "Because I'm his boss, because there are rules about relationships in the workplace." Sophie sank onto the couch. "I was stupid to think this could work." Riley sat beside her, taking her hand. "You're not stupid for falling in love, Sophie. You've taken care of us for so long. You deserve to be happy too." But happiness felt impossible as the situation deteriorated. The investigation became public knowledge, and suddenly, Sophie was the subject of hospital gossip. Some staff members were supportive, but others looked at her with judgment or pity. Articles appeared in medical trade publications about conflicts of interest in hospital hiring practices, never naming names, but clearly referencing Stone Medical Center. Gabriel tried to fight back, but his hands were tied. The board insisted he recuse himself from anything involving Sophie's employment. He hired lawyers, prepared to sue for wrongful termination if necessary, but Sophie could see the strain in his face, the way this was tearing him apart. "This is killing you," Sophie said one night when he showed up at her apartment looking exhausted and defeated. "Watching your hospital, your legacy, become tabloid fodder because of me." "I don't care about the tabloids. I care about you. But you care about Stone Medical too. You built it for Rebecca, for your daughter. I won't be the reason it's destroyed." Gabriel pulled her close. "Sophie, listen to me. Stone Medical is bricks and equipment and procedures. Yes, important, but not irreplaceable. You are irreplaceable. I lost one woman I loved because I couldn't save her. I will not lose you because I'm too afraid to fight." "What if fighting means losing everything? Your hospital, your reputation, your relationship with your daughter's grandparents, Rebecca's parents, if they hear about this and think you're dishonoring her memory?" "Rebecca would have liked you." Gabriel's voice was thick with emotion. "She always said I needed someone who would challenge me, who wouldn't let me hide behind work. You're that person, Sophie." But Sophie could feel the walls closing in. The investigation revealed that Gabriel had indeed expedited her hiring, had personally approved her housing assistance, had given her opportunities not available to other staff. None of it was illegal, but all of it looked bad. The board called an emergency meeting to discuss Gabriel's leadership. "They're going to ask you to choose," Sophie said, reading the meeting agenda Gabriel had left on his desk. "The hospital or me? Then I choose